Welcome to the Messy Family Podcast. Today is a topic that I think can be uncomfortable for a lot of parents. And we want to open up with somebody who I consider probably the world's greatest expert on this topic.
Right.
That's really going to help parents navigate a challenging time as you talk about sex and relationships and everything else with your kids.
Right. And I think that so often the reason that we are uncomfortable talking to our kids about sex or all of those kinds of things, or how they express it with their bodies, love, and all of those things, is because we have a problem with it ourselves. It's not just talking. You know, the more comfortable you are with yourself.
I was uncomfortable thinking about this.
The more comfortable you are with yourself, and the more that you know who you are as a son or daughter of God, and how chastity, the role of chastity in your own lives, or even loving yourself when you were your child's age.
Yes.
I think that the more that you are in that healthy place, the easier it is to talk about this. And so I think that it's good. This is such a great topic to talk about, because parents need to be thinking about these things and not be caught blindsided, you know?
So true.
But kind of like get yourself in a good headspace, if you will, in general. And then, which for your own sake, first of all, but then in additionally, because that's the best way to form our kids.
So what we're going to unpack for you in the interview is some practical tips on what to say. We're going to go into what's age appropriate on some level.
Right.
And we're going to give you, I think, greater confidence.
Yeah.
And we're talking today to Jason Evert. Jason is a best-selling author. He's been speaking about chastity. He's been speaking to teens and preteens for 20 years.
But Mike really just first met him as the setup boy.
I
don't know. He didn't bring that up.
Yeah.
So a million years ago, 35 years ago.
That's right.
When Mike was the manager at our student center at Franciscan University. He was the manager of the center, student manager.
Jason set up all the rooms. He was amazing.
He was the setup boy. Yeah. And he was great. And he did a great job. And then he went on to much bigger and better things.
Yeah.
We didn't actually bring that up in the interview. I was actually thinking about it, but
we're bringing it up now. So if you're listening, still love you, baby. All right. But before we get into today's interview, we want to tell you about two very exciting, very free opportunities for you.
Very free. Not just a little free.
They're all in free. Yeah. But I think they're huge, and I think one of them is particularly aligned with what we're talking about today.
Right.
So the first one is on August 23rd. If you've ever read the book, The Temperaments God Gave You, The Temperaments God Gave Your Child, the whole temperament series.
We have put out, we refer to the temperamentquiz.com a lot, like in our courses and things, because I think it is extremely helpful, free tool that anybody can go and use. Those are the people
we're having the authors, Art and Lorraine Bennett, on for a date night on August 23rd. We're going to talk about the dynamics in marriage.
I am so excited about this.
As well as the dynamics with you as a parent with your kids.
Right. So we're going to talk about family dynamics and the temperaments, because we thought it was just like too small of a topic just to talk about marriage or just to talk about kids. We're going to talk about family dynamics with that. I am
they are
excited.
Awesome.
Yes.
And this, if you have done it or it's been a while, you need to come. It's going to be a lot of fun. Invite your friends, invite your family. It's totally free. There are a couple of hundred already signed up.
Within the first 2 hours, we had 100 people signed up for this webinar.
So you don't want to miss out.
2 hours going just to our list.
So log in so you make sure you get signed up for that free webinar. You won't want to miss it. Again, and if you can't make it that time, there is the recording will be made available.
And of course, we'll do it as a podcast too. So you guys will hear it on here. But you get to see it and everything.
And then we have this special celebrity who will be speaking on a important topic to women.
Yeah. So we have been talking, I think we've mentioned on here already, that we're launching an on-demand course for moms and daughters called Women Wonderfully Made. So to get everyone started on that, to kind of lay the foundation, I'm doing a webinar for moms on preparing for womanhood. So how to prepare your daughter for womanhood. And so this is a moms only. I mean, dads, I guess, could come, but it's not really. Only. It's moms only, talking about basically the two most important conversations you have to have with your daughter as she goes through adolescence, and then giving you 3 things that you need to do yourself to get ready for that conversation. And I love moms. I love them so much. And I love doing this course. The course we've done live for years now, for probably 3 or 4 years. I think it's 4 years.
Yeah.
4 years we've been doing this course live, but now we're going to be launching it into an on-demand format. So nobody has to wait for the course to be offered. They can just go ahead and you can buy it and watch the videos with your daughter and all of that. But before all of that, I want to meet live with all the moms out there who are getting daughters ready for adolescence. You know what, guys? Ladies, you could make it like a girls' night. Get together with some friends, get a tablet, get a bottle of wine, get together, come to the webinar, watch the webinar, and have some great discussion about really the importance of mothers.
That's right.
As being a guide for their daughters through adolescence. As important as the work that Jason is doing and the work that your youth minister is doing and priests are doing, guys, nobody can do for your daughter what you as a mother can do.
That's right.
And that you need to believe that, to understand that. And that's what this webinar is about. And I'm obviously very passionate about this. So I really just come.
And this webinar is going to give you a ton of great inspiration and encouragement, but a lot of practical conversations. Because in this interview, we talked with Jason about what do we actually say? You actually help walk moms through some of these crucial conversations. Tons of value. You're going to want to sign up and get your friends there. Again, that's September 5th. Alicia will be doing the webinar, Prepare for Womanhood. Right. It's for moms who have daughters that are preteen or early teen daughters, right?
Honestly, I would say
any mom.
I would say any mom, because even if you have a 7 or 8 years old, I think that you can be looking ahead, because remember, this is preparing for. So I'm going to be talking to you about how you yourself can be laying that foundation to be that guide.
Good.
So
sign
anyway,
up. Both of those are available free on our website. We'll link in the show notes here.
We love free.
Or at messyfamilyproject.org. And now we'll jump into our interview. Again, we talked about this before, but Jason is really an acclaimed author and speaker.
Yes.
He's traveled around the world speaking on chastity and theology of the
body. If you're not following him on social media right now, you need to. He has some great stories about his trip to Australia, and I will let you go there and learn about that. But he is the best-selling author of 15 books, including How to Find Your Soulmate Without Losing Your Soul. And he and his wife, Kristalina, who I've been on some other programs with, they're raising their family and run chastity.com, as well as the Chastity Project Ministry.
Yeah, and they just launched a new or newly updated version with Ascension Press of Envision, Theology of the Body for middle schoolers. Let's jump right into the interview and conversation with Jason.
Pope John Paul II said the word chastity needs to be rehabilitated. And so we kind of take that as our mission. A lot of people just want to avoid it, skirt around it. It's got too much baggage associated with it. But we really should love this virtue, not just submit ourselves, be willing to do it because the church says so, but to realize that this is the virtue that frees us to love. It's the virtue that frees us to know if we're authentically being loved. And people think I have a hard time or a hard job, like, wow, it must be hard, selling chastity to teenagers. But it's really not. It's like giving away steak in like some famished third world country because they're starving for authentic human love, starving for the truth, and chastity offers them both.
Yes. And I think that is something that parents have to realize too, because sometimes, when parents are thinking about training their own kids in virtue, sometimes we parents, we think about our own baggage or maybe our own bad experiences. And so we kind of feel like, well, how do I talk about this with my kids? But to recognize that like the heart of the person, they want to love. Like kids, they want it. They want to know how to love. And of course we teach them that by our example as parents. But I think that there's also like to kind of like draw that out for kids. You must have an exciting job because it's great to like really give the good news to this culture who's really dying for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and that's the key. This is good news. This isn't just like a litany of prohibitions to ruin their day and keep them away from their boyfriend. It's like, no, I'm not asking them not to love that person. I'm just challenging them to love them even more. And so I remember young people said of John Paul II when he was a young priest, when they would go hiking with him, they said he was happy and demanding. And that combo is really potent. And so the kids, they notice when you're authentic and you're real with them and you're not just shaming and condemning them. And I find that they respond in a really generous way because they want a love that's pure. They want to be sacrificial and noble and heroic. And the culture's basically given up on them, but we shouldn't.
Right.
Yeah. And parents do feel, I think the parents who are listening know that they need to do something. But I want to motivate them to understand, and I guess I'll make the transition from pure a chastity talk, which I know integrates this, but what people may have in their mind is a pure chastity talk, to theology of the body. Can you give me the Cliff Notes version of theology of the body? And then why is that important for parents to understand a little bit, at least, of theology of the body?
Yeah, people hear the word theology of the body and they just think, oh, it's like Catholic sex ed. But, it's so much broader than that. It's 5 years of Wednesday audiences that Pope John Paul II delivered at the beginning of his pontificate. And it really focuses on, like, who am I and how should I live? And so the idea is that we're made in the image and likeness of God. God is love. So we're made in the image and likeness of love. And love doesn't live in isolation. It's a gift of self to another in a life-giving way. And so a 5-year-old could do that by comforting their sister who hurt her knee, that I'm giving myself in love in a life-giving way to that person. So we could begin these foundational building blocks of, like, you are created to make a gift of yourself and love. And by doing so, you find yourself in that process. And then we begin with those as the building blocks. So when they become teenagers, we can kind of tie that into the topic of human sexuality. That it's not just mere abstinence, which is just the absence of sex. It's the presence of this virtue of chastity that, as I said, frees you to love. And so it's a much fuller understanding than just simply abstinence, don't do that, Catholic sex ed. It's really like, who am I and how should I live? Whether that's as a single person, married, religious, or whatever.
Well, when you give that example of, like, the child comforting, their sibling who got hurt, what it makes me think of is to teach kids from the very beginning that what we do with our bodies matters.
Yeah,
it
matters.
It matters how you treat your sibling, whether it's pushing them down, right? Or, being like siblings do, or comforting them. Like, it matters how you touch each other. It matters how you treat your body and somebody else's body. Like, I remember when we were kids, my dad used to say to my brothers, like, kind of like half joking, but not joking. He would be like, girls are very fragile. You need to be gentle with them. And I remember hearing him say that, and, like, the way that he would talk to my brothers. And like I said, he was kind of like half joking, but also sending a very important message that how you touch your sisters, you don't treat them like you treat your brothers, like, it should be different. So those, like, very simple lessons for kids, that's theology of the body. Like, our bodies are important and other people's bodies are important in how we treat each other, even starting just in the home, right? And those conversations and lessons that we teach our kids. It's not as complicated as sometimes parents would make it sound.
Yeah, and not only that what we do with our bodies matters, but that our bodies in themselves matter, that our bodies are meaningful.
Yes.
The body isn't meaningless. And so the fact that God created you a boy means certain things. It reveals not only your identity as a male, but your mission as a man. And what is that? And so what our world is doing right now is just trying to invert all of this, that the body is meaningless. What we do with it is meaningless. And so it's kind of restoring meaning. John Paul said that we've been given a task right now to rediscover the meaning of our bodies.
And when we as parents are sitting there looking out, again, whether you've got young kids or they're already in middle school or they're on to high school or whatever, it's like we have the opportunity in our home with the way we treat them, but also the way that we set expectations, the way we communicate to really build. I almost feel like it's early days. It's almost like pre-evangelization, like we're laying the foundation for them to get it, right? Like even the stories we tell them, the way that we surround them, it's setting up for us a platform. And I always feel like there is a golden time in the life of a parent when our kids are between the ages of 9 and 12. where we can really speak to their heart in such a way that we're still somewhat of a superhero. You know, we still have the juice, if you will, that, but that they are also at a pivotal time, right? And so are there certain things, certain conversations or actions that you would say that would kind of be that, my term may be pre-evangelization, thinking of theology of the body, right? That set the foundation for that deeper conversation that might come more in the middle school and high school years?
Yeah, I heard a quote once that said, "Rules without a relationship creates rebellion."
We say that all the time.
Yeah. That's true between God and humanity. It's true between parents and kids. And so I think when it comes to this pre-evangelization, we need to make sure we're not accidentally doing kind of a de-evangelization.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I mean is good intentioned parents who want to help their kids to avoid sin or the occasion of sin might start talking about dirty body parts, or like that's a bad body part, or like, no. All of the body is good. And that's not covered because it's dirty, but because it's special and for a special use. So we've got to make sure that we're not using the wrong language. You know, even in terms of ideas like your virginity is the best gift you could ever give another person. You know, the idea is, okay, there's a beautiful intention behind that, but what happens to a teenage girl who may have been abused or made a really dumb mistake when she was 16? She might be left with the idea of, like, the best thing that I could ever give a guy is gone. And so not only am I worthless, like I am worth less because of that. And it's like, well, wait a minute, your value doesn't come from your virginity. Your sexuality has value because of you. You are the greatest gift you could give another person, and you still have yourself to give. And so I think it's really careful that we not adopt some of the things that are being protested right now of purity culture, of wanting to present these things in a beautiful way, but inadvertently idolizing certain aspects or demonizing certain aspects of our sexuality in a way that isn't balanced.
Yeah, because we're hearing that even from married couples who were raised in kind of a purity culture, who then they enter marriage and they've got still qualms and issues with marital intimacy, right? And then and these tapes that are playing, if it was so wrong earlier, how does it automatically become right? You know what I mean? Like just that understanding of they're missing the comprehensive and the cohesive theology of the body. And that's really what we want to do is share what I do with our boys oftentimes is early on, I just talk about our love story, right? I talk about the beauty of dating and pursuit and so forth. And that how, I mean, I don't go into physical intimacy, but just laying the foundation that we're ordered to this. We're desiring this. And when my boys come to me and I find out that we have a no dating rule, right? And so when they come to us, and I say, well, I'm glad you like girls, you know, and then this is why you are oriented towards this. But we build on this.
This is a good attraction. This is wonderful.
But you're not ready yet for a commitment or whatever, you know, that sort of thing. But at least that's what I've found as a parent is telling our story, but telling the bigger story that they're fitting into. And it sets them up much easier for that deeper conversation later.
Yeah, because some of them may think, you know, I like this other girl. Is it okay to like? You know, is it okay to have a crush? Is it okay to start to feel feelings of love? And it's like, if we don't affirm that and like encourage, that's wonderful. Those feelings are natural and you're going to have those. But it doesn't mean that this is the right time to jump in a committed romantic relationship in 7th grade. And so we're affirming it, but then giving some clarity.
Yes. Yeah. And I really do think that in that kind of golden age that we talk, like between that like 9 and 12-year-old, where they can understand these kind of concepts, and you still, like, you as a parent are, you know, kind of like have a different platform right before adolescence. I think recognizing their goodness, the goodness of their attractions, like if they're feeling, I think sometimes they make girls start noticing boys before boys start noticing girls. Like, I don't know, 10-year-old boys still feel like a little bit like they're just like wild little bear cubs, you know, like at that point, where girls are a little bit more aware, and whatever the age is, for them to realize that these things are good, you know, and you are good. And for you to be building up your relationship with them. So one of the things we talk about a lot is building a platform upon which to speak to the heart of your child, because it's not just one sex talk conversation, right? it's a whole series of conversations that you have with your child as they are growing and developing into going from being a boy or a girl to being a man or a woman, you know? And could you just speak to why the parents are so important in that time of transition? Why parents specifically are so important?
Yeah, I remember seeing a survey once where they asked high school students around the country, what is the number one factor that shapes your sexual behavior? Is it the media? Is it your friends? Is it this or that? And the teenagers' number one reply across the country was my parents and what they brought me up to believe. Number one reply among the teens.
Wow.
And so one tip that I found to be helpful along the way is I wrote a book on Jehovah's Witnesses years and years ago, and I was researching it. There used to be a president of the Jehovah's Witnesses. His name was Judge Rutherford. When they first got started as the Witnesses, they would show up to evangelize at your door with a record player, because those are really exciting things at the time. And so you open up the door and wow, there's a record player. And then you would sit there and like listen to a speech from Judge Rutherford, you know, for 5 minutes and then talk about it, you know. And at the time, like that was like cutting edge stuff. And like, it worked. People wanted to see it. But then there came a time in history where people like, who's that person out front with a record player? I'm not going to open the door. And they realized, okay, we got to pivot. You know, that conversation style isn't going to cut it nowadays. And so I found with my kids, my daughter, who's now a teenager, when she was in that 9 to 12-year-old range, and I showed up at her room at, 8 o'clock at night, close to bedtime, she'd be happy to swing open the door. I'd sit down on the edge of the bed and ask her about her day, and she'd talk for half an hour. But then she hit something, I don't know, 14, 15, 16. You show up at 8 o'clock at night to talk, and it's like, what do you need, Dad?
Yeah.
Like, checking in on you. Like, I've got homework. I need to text my friends. Like, I need to do my hair for tomorrow. And it's like, okay, that's not the time for her anymore.
We call that the fog. That's what I call it. They go into the fog.
Yeah, but what I found is that I had to kind of drop the record player approach and try something new. And I found if I take her to like a swanky little restaurant once every 3 weeks of like some cool, chic little place to hang out where, a place you take someone on a first date kind of thing, cool, the Old Town Scottsdale area here. And man, she'll sit there and I'll try their little appetizers, talk for an hour and a half, and just totally open because it's just her and me. There's no annoying siblings. She doesn't need to answer text messages. And I realized I just had to pivot my approach to find where she's comfortable talking. And like my boys, where is it? It's if we go up in the woods and we look for antlers together and we're out there for 5 hours, kind of shoulder by shoulder, and we can have lots of talks. And so I've just found with each kid, there's kind of different window of opportunity to have those important conversations. And it's not necessarily, I'm going to come to your bedroom when it's good for my schedule and hope that you're just going to open up.
Right. Yeah. I always think is that like teenagers, when they start getting into that time of adolescence, they see, like not consciously, but they see adulthood in front of them. It's right there. And they don't want to be reminded of the things they did when they were kids because they're like, no, I don't want to be a little kid. I don't want you to come and sit on my bed. That's what we did when I was 5, Dad. And again, they're not consciously thinking this, but they want to be treated like an adult, And we have found that when Mike begins treating our daughters like young women, like taking them out to the restaurant or taking them out for coffee or something, there's something in them that longs for that. Yeah. And you're really setting up for them. This is how you deserve to be treated. This is what it means, like this is how I, as an adult man, this is how I treat your mother, adult women, or like, this is how I treat my guy friends. Like we're out like doing stuff together, talking or whatever. And I feel like that's, kids, they want to be seen and be treated, teens specifically, as an adult. Mm-hmm. They, and that's such a great point of that, that idea of pivoting, because I feel like sometimes if parents get stuck and they keep trying to do the same things they did when their kids were 7 or 8 years old, then parents get frustrated and they think, well, my kid just doesn't want to talk to me. No, that's not it. They do. They just need you to pivot and change that approach because you're still that important, really.
And they need you.
And boys to girls too. Like we do these daddy days in the summer where I just ask them, what do you ever want to do? And, my teenage son, he's like, yeah, I want to go to the shooting range and shoot a Desert Eagle, which is like this handgun that like breaks your wrist when you shoot the thing. But like, that's what he wanted. And so we did that, and we just destroyed my wrists shooting the thing. And then on the way home, I'm just super happy to talk. And it's like, okay, I got to find their thing, kind of their love language. And then it teaches them, especially my daughters, that not only do I want to listen to you, you deserve to be listened to.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right. It's definitely communicating not only a sense of identity, that we're together, that you're my beloved son, that you're my beloved daughter, but that you're worthy. You're worthy of it. This is what you should be treated like. And I've always found that particularly with boys, it's 90% activity and 10% talking. That's what I've always found that ratio to work pretty well.
Yeah. Because I think that sometimes if parents too, if they think they hear some, how important they are in their children's sexual behavior as teenagers, sometimes they think, well, I just got to jump into that conversation. But I think that what we would say is, no, wait a minute. You gotta open up their hearts. You have to, show them that they're worthy of being listened to, that they're worthy of respect. There's all of these like precursors to that. Don't just feel like you got to jump in the deep end, like do all of these things to build up. And then we've found anyway that those conversations, those deeper conversations are easier because our kids are used to us talking to them and
taking them
to
seriously.
Yeah.
And so, go ahead.
One quick quote. I heard it said once, if you talk to your kids about anything, you'll be able to talk to them about everything. Or it was backwards. No, if you talk to kids about everything, it'll be easier to talk about anything. I mean, take an interest in their soccer, their SAT, their friends, or this, that. Then you have a right to be heard of the more sensitive stuff instead of kind of, like you said, jumping in on this real personal subject and expecting they're going to listen.
Exactly. Yeah, because we do hear that from parents. And I remember this dad calling me one time, or it was digital. He was like, okay, Mike, I get it. I need to talk to my son. I need to talk about passing on masculinity. Okay, what do I do? What does that look like? Give me the script, and I think it's important that parents first get that they are so vital, that they are needed by their kids, regardless of any eye rolling or anything else that might be communicating something to the contrary. Your kids need you, but we need to do that pre-work, if you will, really having a honest to goodness connection of love and witness to set that foundation, right? And maybe planting those seeds of conversations, like we said, on multiple topics, so that they know we care about them, and also we care about the world they live in. If he wants to shoot that gun or wants to go to this coffee shop or whatever it might be, that we're speaking into that. But then when we get to having the talks, why is it important that they hear it from parents? Because I have a real concern that too many parents are waiting too long, and the world is responding. The world is answering what it means to be a man or woman. What does love look like? What is all of that, right? I don't know if you can speak to that, just because I want to make sure parents get
the resources.
They know the plan. Like people are looking, well, what do I do? And when do I do it? What would you recommend as parents are saying, hopefully looking ahead, right? They've got maybe a rising middle schooler, 9, 10-year-old, 12-year-old. What do we do? What do you recommend for them in having some of those conversations?
Yeah, one is get over your insecurities when it comes to talking to your kids about that subject, because like as I said, if you don't speak, the world is going to fill the void of your silence with a very contrary message. And a lot of parents feel ill-equipped. They're like, my parents never talked to me about this stuff, other than some death threats. So, what am I supposed to do? I wasn't perfect. And what if my kid finds out that I wasn't perfect? I'll look like a hypocrite. It's like, your authority doesn't come from your perfection. Your authority comes from your parenthood that's given to you by God. If you've made mistakes and you've repented, you're not a hypocrite. You're a convert. And so in the same respect, but if you haven't repented, you might need to stay quiet, because kids can spot a fake. And so I think our kids aren't always going to obey us, but they'll never fail to imitate us. And so we've got to make sure that we're not only explaining them the church's teachings on these subjects, but we're living them out in our day-to-day life. Otherwise, I'm sorry, I can't hear what you're saying. Your actions are speaking too loudly.
Yes, yes. So true, so true. And really, when you think about it, what are, I don't know if there's one or two, or what are some of the big kind of the questions that preteens have, whether they're asking them or not, that parents need to address?
Well, I mean, a couple of the questions, when can I start dating? And I think we've got to be clear on that one. And our family, I don't know about yours, but we had no dating before you're like 18 years old. So that's kind of where we cut off. We figure, okay, if you can fight in Afghanistan, it's okay to date. Because the fact is, the average woman in America gets married at the age of 30 now. It's never been like this before. But that means if you start dating at 12, you could be in an 18-year-long dating relationship. It's it's not even practical. Even if you meet a great person, who cares? She's going to UCLA in 2 years. You're going to Franciscan University of Steubenville.
Amen.
4,000-mile distance. So we got to just pace ourselves a little bit. And it's not enough to tell them not to date. We have to teach them why to date, who to date, how to date, all of these principles. Instead of just giving them a list of no's, they want to know how to date. Because a lot of these kids graduate high school, go off to college, and all they know is what they're not supposed to do.
That's right.
They never actually taught them the principles of courtship and dating. And so let's begin these conversations so they know the why behind the what of our rules.
Yeah, that's so key. And getting down, again, every family may have a distinction, but the importance of knowing what is dating for? What's its purpose? What does it look like? And while they're under your roof, you need to give them that formation. You need to be able to pass that on so that when they are launched off, they actually have it together. Because a lot of our world, I think the reason why people are waiting so long is that they've never known the purpose of dating, right? And we've lost that sense of what it's for and how to be, if you want a good spouse, then how do you become a good spouse to find that perfect match for you?
Before we got to start wrapping up things, but I really, really would love to talk about Envision. The program, as we're talking to parents, and parents are thinking like Mike said, hey, how do I get started? What are the good resources for parents? Can you just tell our audience here, what is Envision and what was your role in it?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a good bridge. The question you were asking was what are these kids asking? And, I think one of the big questions, is she the one? Is he the one? But the real question is are you the one? Are you doing what you got to do to prepare for the vocation God has planned for you? And so what Envision is a curriculum. Years ago, we created one called Theology, the Body for Teens. It was a high school edition. And then there was this demand look, our kids don't need to start hearing this when they're 14. They need this in middle school or before.
Yes.
So we created Theology, the Body for Teens middle school edition. And now more than a decade has passed since we wrote that thing, and culture's changed a little bit in the last 10 years or so. And so we realized, okay, we need to bring this thing up to speed. Our parents today are on a frontier of parenthood, having to face issues that weren't even on the radar 10 years ago.
Absolutely.
And so we did this entire curriculum, basically taking St. John Paul II's Theology of the Body and bringing it down to a junior high level without watering it down. We're making it accessible for them to understand these basic principles about life and love. And so it's got a student workbook, it's got a leader's guide, it's got a parent's guide, which is nice and short and just gives lots of really helpful tips and internet safety and communication techniques, DVD, digital platform. So parents, churches, schools can kind of plug and play and then let us do the teaching and then follow it up with some discussion.
That's
so
beautiful.
Is this something that parents can go to Ascension's website, and could a parent just buy this for themselves, or does it have to be through a school or parish?
Yeah, not only can you buy it yourself, I think you can try it for 45 days for free to say,
wow.
Is it the right fit? So they've got some really good deals. So you don't need to be a CCD teacher, an 8th grade Catholic high school teacher. This could be mom, dad, homeschooler, whatever. I just got my first copy, I think yesterday, came in the mail. So it's just right hot off the press, but it's something, any parent can use. And typically we recommend about 6th to 8th grade level would be the sweet spot. As writing the thing, we're deciding, okay, do we put this subject in the book is like, this is really an issue with some 7th and 8th grade kids, but does every 6th grader need to hear that stuff? And so when it came to the sensitive issues, we kind of put those in the appendix of the videos in the book. So that way, if the teacher knows, look, my kids need this and they need it now, they can play that segment of the curriculum. If they know, okay, this isn't even a question my 6th grader's asking, then it won't be covered in the curriculum. So we tried to make it in such a way that it can be used by those who need the more sensitive subject, as well by those who might be sheltered in a better home environment where these questions aren't coming up so early.
Right. Because I know that's something that I know that as a parent myself, when my oldest, who's now 29, when they were like when they were getting into middle school, there's a certain, I wanted to be sensitive to where she was at, and not, scandalize her unnecessarily. You know what I mean? Like not give information before she was ready, but at the same time, when she was ready, to make sure that I could be on the forefront of that. So it sounds like it is, because I know that some Catholic parents are hesitant about any curriculum like this, because they're like, does my child really need that right now? But it sounds like it's something that a parent could get, they could look at, and if they're like, yeah, this is perfect, they're bringing up topics that I can then use as food for conversation with my child.
Yeah, and the idea is we can use the teachable moments that our culture is throwing in our face incessantly. If you're sitting with your kid watching, let's say, the Olympics opening ceremonies, it's like
crazy.
And
oh my
we can't
gosh.
necessarily just change the channel like, okay, nobody saw that. It's like, okay, I've got to be able to speak into that. And so a lot of these things we may not want to talk to our kids about, but when the culture's throwing it in their face, it's like, okay, an explanation is needed.
Right.
And I have found that in our parenting over the years, I haven't done this universally, but in a number of occasions where there's stuff for our kids, it was accessible enough for me. And so it also was a great tool so that when there are those teaching moments, I have consumed this this great resource like an Envision, right? That then helps me as a parent, because there are going to be those moments where there are going to be necessary conversations, and too many parents don't know how to respond, or they're just hesitant, right? And so I just want to encourage folks to look into this great product that Jason, Ascension, and a whole host of people, right? A number of people have been a part of this, because we need to equip ourselves. If we're going to lead our kids, if we're going to form our kids, if we care about them so much so for not only their success in school and success in life, but really their eternal destination, we need to be ready so that when their hearts are ready, when the student is ready, that we have an answer for them.
And the difficult thing too is, like you just said, maybe when I was 12 years old, my parents didn't have to have these conversations with me because the opening ceremony of the Olympics didn't look like that either. So it's like, parents, you really, in some ways, I feel like the culture is forcing us to start confronting and to start addressing these issues because I mean, I don't know, this is just the world in which our children live, for good or for bad. But I think we have to see that, and instead of being regretful, I guess, about that, to realize, no, this is an excellent opportunity to teach children really what they are made for, what are human beings made for from an earlier age, and allow God to use that.
Yeah. And so instead of being afraid, oh no, like what is the world going to do to our kids?
Exactly.
I think that's not really the Christian disposition. It should be, okay, what are my kids going to do to this world?
Amen.
God brought them into creation for such a time as this, and they need to see that we have confidence in them to be able to face these things, and bring the light of the gospel to them.
Yeah. All right. Well, as we wrap up, I just wanted to give you the last word here. But Jason, you bring a message of hope and light and beauty to so many schools, so many parishes, and so many continents. Really, thank you for your work. I know as parents, we rely on it. I know our kids have read a lot of your books over the years and been to your talks. But any final encouragement for our parents as they're in the trenches trying to raise our kids in this mixed up world?
Well, one, don't beat yourself up as a parent if your kid's not just the saint that you are as a parent. I mean, a lot of times we expect like some 45-year-old level of spiritual development from our 15-year-olds, and we're surprised, why is he not where I'm at right now? It's like, dude, where was I when I was a 15? I was a dumpster fire. And I mean, think about Saint Therese of Lisieux, okay? She's a saint. Her mom's a saint. Her dad's a saint. Her sister got kicked out of Catholic boarding school 3 times for behavioral problems. And it's like, I love it. Like, did you not get the memo? And she finally got her act together when she was 37 and entered the convent herself, but she took quite a detour. And so don't beat yourself up. I mean, and look at the best parent in the universe. It's the Heavenly Father. Now look at how messed up all of his kids are down here, okay? It's not because he's like this defective dad. His kids have free will. And so I think God, if you've got a difficult one or two at home, God chose you as a parent for that soul because he knew that you were the one that would never give up in interceding for that child. And not only will you sanctify that child will sanctify you through this cross that they're allowing you to bear in God's providence. And so don't let your peace be taken from you. God's in charge. He loves your kids even more than we do, and he's going to have the final say. So just continue to offer up that suffering for those graces to come into their lives, and don't give up in interceding. God will answer those prayers.
Amen.
Right.
Amen. And if people want to stay connected to you, where should they go, Jason?
Real easy. Just go to chastity.com, and then they can connect with us on our Instagram, which is my name, Jason Evert, or our Twitter or wherever. But chastity.com has our podcast, our products, our resources. Everything's at chastity.com. And then the curriculum for the junior high and high school kids, they can get over at Ascension Press.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Jason, thanks for joining us, and God bless you and your work.
So thanks for having me on. God bless you guys.
Okay, I hope you appreciated that as much as we did. It's great to hear kind of succinct. I love the way he puts some things. They're very, very simple, very
You
accessible.
can tell he's a speaker, that he has learned how to communicate certain different ideas like very succinctly in a way that you can remember.
And he spoke not just as kind of a speaker from the podium, but also as a dad.
Absolutely.
And I really, really appreciated that. But we want to give you some key takeaways. We can't just tell our kids what not to do. We must also communicate that chastity gives them freedom, right? Chastity gives them the freedom to love. And that's probably the foundation, really, for chastity and really theology of the body. And knowing the theology of the body answers the questions, who am I and how should I live? Those are 2 powerful questions.
Okay, then the last 2 is what we've picked out from the interview is that the world tells our kids that their bodies are meaningless, but in reality, their bodies are meaningful, and that what we do with our bodies matters. And that's not just even in their sexuality, but in how they treat their own body and how they treat other people's bodies. And last, which is something that we say all the time. Rules without relationships breed rebellion. So most of our kids know that we love them, right? But do they believe that we like them? I really appreciated that point. I'm so glad he said that. We need to communicate to our kids that we like them. We like being with them. This is the foundation that needs to be laid in order to form our children.
Yeah. Okay. So those takeaways and more are in the show notes for this podcast,
as well as couple discussion questions that you can do with your spouse, because really that's so important that you digest this with your spouse, with your husband, with your wife, and apply it in your family.
Take the time, have this conversation, make this more than just something you listened to and was interesting. Let it really kind of inform more of how you interact and lead in your home. And again, if you want to join us for any of those webinars, please visit us at messyfamilyproject.org. August 23rd, 2024 is the Temperaments date night on family dynamics and the temperaments, as well as September 5th, Alicia's webinar for moms on preparing for womanhood. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.